All right, happy Friday, my fellow EM aficionados. I am here on the FIB, and I'm going to do a rather important video here for you, talking about the importance of safe stage moves when you're working in your dual beam system. Just caveat, I've said this before, the UI doesn't normally look like this. This is what happens because of the use of the screen capture. So normally I went to view here and I changed this to 80%. When it's on 100%, these are minimi, or they're actually smaller. So this is just a tweak I use when I'm using my screen capture. So anyways, let's talk about what we have here. So let me switch to quad view. Okay, so I've got this big hunk of a sample in here on the 45-degree pre-tilted face. And what I want to do with this is, you can kind of see up here, there are these three areas on here. It's a little hard to see. I'll go in with the SEM here in a minute, but I want to do some FIB polishing to improve the surface and then do some subsequent EBSD. Okay, so let me go ahead here, and I'm going to move over to these. Right now the stage is bottomed out. Okay, and let me go ahead and turn on the beam. So I actually already polished these up. I'm not going to go through how to do that. That should be a separate video. The point of this is I wanted to talk about how to do some safe stage moves here. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these. Okay, where is this? Delete. All right, and we got our SEM on. Let me drop my current down. Switch to full view. All right, so where are we here? Okay, so here we are. So these are actually these are solder joints in like you'd find in like a microelectronics processor or a CPU, and that's the work, is actually we're doing some EBSD on these. So let me go ahead here, switch to F5. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and drive this. So whenever you manually move the stage instead of automatically move the stage, that's always going to be safer, because when you stop, it stops moving, right? So if I was to, like, I'm focused and linked, but if I was to like do this in the stage, that could be a little bit more hazardous. Like generally speaking, the shorter the distance you're traveling, the less of an issue this is. But that's one thing to keep in mind, right? Is you always have more control if you do the movement manually. Okay, that's close enough here. Okay, and then we'll link. Okay, so we're a little short from 4, so we'll go ahead and move to 4. That's only a couple millimeters. Okay, so we are okay right now. Normally what I would do, you can see this is a little bit rotated, so the stage might be pitched. Like if we come back here to this, like this edge right here, normally what I would do is I would ensure this is perfectly horizontal. I'm not going to do that just for purposes of expediency here, but that's probably to a degree why this is a little bit rotated, or it might not be just perfectly flat. But anyways, so right now you can see here in our CCD quad, the SEM is at a 40. This is a 45-degree pre-tilt. The SEM is at 45 degrees relative to the normal direction. The PFIB beam, however, is 7 degrees off from normal, okay, because this is 52 degrees away from the SEM column. So what we need to do if we wanted to polish this surface, here, is we would need to actually rotate the stage 180 degrees, okay, and then we need to do some additional tilting, but then you can imagine like this surface is going to be facing like this, and we're going to put it at more of a glancing angle to the FIB beam, okay? So here's where you need to be very careful with how you do things, okay? So we would start by doing like a relative rotate. There is a feature here that does a compucentric 180 rotation, and it should keep the feature centered after doing the rotation, okay, assuming you've done the compucentric rotation alignment. But before you do that, I would ensure that you have enable safe stage moves checked, okay? So this wasn't checked right now, so go ahead and enable it. So what this does is when you do a large stage move, and the system has some way of figuring out like if it's large enough, the system will automatically back the stage down before it does the motion, okay? So let's do this. So now you could click on this 2 arrows chasing each other, or you could come over here to the stage panel, change to relative, and just put in 180. Make sure you have compucentric rotation checked, and we'll go ahead and click enter. So you can see what it's doing is it's backing the stage down to make sure that it's not going to hit anything, and then it's going to reposition it. So I've never had an issue with any type of touch alarm or collision when I've enabled safe stage moves and done this, okay? So this works really well. It does take a little extra time because you have to back the stage down, but again, right, safety, right? It's just a few seconds, but I know people are impatient, and I'm not gonna lie, like I'm somewhat impatient too, okay? One thing you can do though, right, so let's say so this position, technically speaking, we'd have to tilt. Assuming everything's flat, we would have to actually tilt 7 degrees to get the FIB beam parallel to the surface. And then we'd actually need to tilt like another degree so it actually would see part of the surface, which I'm not going to do. But let's actually, well, for the sake of argument here, let's go ahead and we'll tilt 7 degrees. Okay. And then let's assume that this is what we're going to be using for the milling. Okay, we could store this position here. So if we come over here to the position list, we can click add, and then you see it populates position 1. Now if you want to rename this, what you have to do is you have to slowly double click. So click once, and then twice, and then you can rename it. So we can call this milling position. Okay, if you double click quickly, it actually moves to this position. Okay. So what we can do now, let's go back to the position we just had instead. So that would be closer to. So let me change this back to 0, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll just do it from here, the 180 compucentric rotation. And I'm going to actually set this up as if I was doing the EBSD. Okay, so on our system, the optimal working distance for EBSD is 8 millimeters, and then we would have to tilt 25 additional degrees to get to 70 degrees of tilt. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and type in 8 for Z. That's going to back it down. And then again, since we have ZY link on this system, we can impose eccentricity at this working distance. And I'll tilt in 5-degree increments. Okay, and you can see what it's doing is it's keeping the area centered as it tilts, even though we're not at mechanical eccentric. Okay, I like to go in 5-degree increments just to be safe. Okay, one more. Okay. So you can see very clearly now, this would be our EBSD position, okay? So let me go ahead and store this. So I can click add, and now we'll call it EBSD position. Okay, so now they're not in the same, all right, I'm going to change this so they're next to each other. So we'll call this position milling. And let me find the other one. Position EBSD. Okay, so now they're next to each other. Okay, so now, if I double click, right, I can quickly move between these, okay? But keep in mind, right, if I was doing EBSD, my camera would be inserted right about here, okay? So now, if you're not careful, let's say that you had the camera in, and then for some reason you wanted to change the name of this position underscore milling, like you misnamed it, okay? If you're not careful, if you double click too quickly, it will actually move here. And if the camera's here, well, what's going to happen? You're going to smack this into the camera, right? So this is unfortunately like a glitch. I shouldn't say a glitch, but like a shortcoming with this. This is running Windows 7. I don't know if they fixed this on the newer systems, but you can see, right, if I go slow enough, it renames it, but if I go fast, whoops, it actually moves it, okay? And you can imagine, right, if the camera was in here, I would have just smacked into it, okay? So the point I'm trying to make here is, just be cautious when you're doing this, especially when you have things inserted like your EBSD camera. Let me go back to position EBSD here. So my suggestion would be that when you have the EBSD camera inserted, just to be absolutely sure that you're not going to, potentially cause any collision, I would say two things. One is I would always if I was doing any movement with the stage, I would do it manually, okay? I wouldn't use any stored positions because there's too much of a risk that you might, even if you had like a stored position. So let me come back here. So right, you can see, right, along here I've got different areas here, right? I could store here, 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 and do EBSD on those. The problem though is, right, and even if those are okay, if I click on the wrong position and I accidentally activate it, if it's one where this is going to share space with the camera, you're going to hit it, okay? And you don't want that. So whenever the camera is inserted, which again it's not right now, I would only manually do movements, okay? So only with your mouse or your joystick or your double left click or within this stage panel here, but not within the stored stage positions. The other thing is I would not try to rename any of these positions either, okay? Because there's too much of a risk that you might accidentally activate it if you end up clicking twice faster than you think, right? So in other words, right, I have the camera in and I realize, okay, I need to rename this something else. If I don't slow double click and I double click too quickly, this is going to end up moving to this position and that may cause a collision, okay? So in this case, this one actually absolutely would, right? So that's the PSA, if you will, about safe stage movements and how to prevent a potential issue. So hopefully you found that useful. This was just something I wanted to share with everybody, just in light of some things I've noticed recently. So I always like to do these kind of quick hitter videos. I know maybe not the most sexiest stuff, but sometimes that's the stuff that's the most useful, right, for practical benefit. So hopefully you found that useful. Hope you're having a good week, good Friday, and I'll talk to you all soon.